Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new expanded deck profile video. Today we're going to be going over a new stall type of deck that I created in the expanded format that's almost just good enough. It just falls a little short, honestly, but it's a lot of fun to play. I've been testing with it on the ladder, and yeah, I've gotten some okay results with it, you know, give or take a few unfortunate games. This deck is focusing around the adorable and somewhat decent Komala from Lost Origins, so a brand new card. And we're basing it around the All Just a Dream ability. If this Pokemon is asleep and is knocked out by damage from an attack from your opponent's Pokemon, your opponent can't take any prize cards for it. The attack is terrible and we're not attacking. The retreat is awful and we're not retreating. And the HP is god-awful and we can't take advantage of it. Unfortunately, this attack is just a little too expensive for not enough payoff. This HP is 10 HP more than what it should be, because if it was 90, we could use Level Ball and Rescue Carrier, and its retreat is 2, which is always rough. We'd prefer 1, so we could use things like U-turn board and recycle energy to move around the field as we'd like. Unfortunately, this card is just a bad basket of eggs, but we're going to work around this All Just a Dream ability to give it something of viability. I think it would be a lot better. If it had 90 HP, I think it would legitimately be a much better card. But we'll work with what we got. We have 2 copies here of Drowzee from Noble Victories with the Pound attack. This is the best Drowzee because it has 70 HP, which is the highest Drowzee has gone, and then it also has a resistance to fighting. Pound for 10 is completely and utterly worthless, however, it is an attack that you can use, so it's better than the Drowzee we're getting in Silver Tempest. So this stays the best Drowzee. We have 3 copies of Hypno. Love this artwork from Breakpoint with the Good Night Babies ability. Once during your turn, before you attack, you may leave both active Pokemon asleep, and the attacks are irrelevant, so we don't talk about it. 2 retreat does obviously suck, gotta watch out for that. 90 HP on this boy does make him level searchable. I don't think we do play level. And you do see we play an irregular 2-3 line. This is because it's actually easier to get the Ditto into play. So like we can always have like we want 2 Hypnos in play at all times, but you're not at all worried about it getting knocked out. Usually your opponent's only going to be able to guess it like once or twice because we're going to stop them. And then your Hypnos will be safe. 2-3 runs pretty fine if you want to run 3-3. You could even cut the Ditto. I just like the Ditto because it's differentiation in the type. And I did used to run a Ditto tech in here, but I took it out because I didn't find it useful. I ran a Lowland Muck. You know, it just didn't help because then your All Just a Dream got turned off and you were just hoping your opponent didn't wake up. Because, you know, this deck is kind of interesting with that. And it also turns off your Snack Search. So if you want to turn Ditto into a 3rd Drowzee, you could. I think it's good for the differentiated because this thing is resistant to fighting, whereas this thing is not. But I could definitely see where you'd want to move that. 2 copies of Munchlax with the Snack Search is Level Ball searchable, which is awesome. Once during your turn, before you attack, flip a coin. If heads, put a card from your pile on top of your deck. If you use this ability, your turn ends. Since we are almost never going to be attacking with this deck, besides our one next card, you can actually use this to go fetch your cards back from the discard pile on top of the deck every single turn, as long as it's not being turned off by something like Silent Lab. That's why I end up cutting the Muck. Like I said, if you want to move it over here, you can. This is just a remnant of that list, but I still think it's good to differentiate basics. And we just want to be able to get back our cards. This combo is pretty straightforward, honestly. You're going to really set yourself up so that your opponent just can't break the combo with gusting up a Hypno. And then once they do use Guzma, we're going to get rid of it. Because Guzma is the biggest threat to this deck. That and Escape Rope are both huge threats to this deck strategy, but we're just going to completely and utterly mill our opponent while getting rid of those. So you're going to want to get back your milling supporters, and you're going to want to be able to getting back your stretchers and stuff like that to get your Hypnos back on board. So Munchlax is absolutely good. 2 copies is absolutely needed. Yeah, I love him. He's very cute. 1 copy of Girafarig. We use this for the Get Lost attack. 90 HP Level Ball searchable is nice. Put 2 cards from your opponent's discard pile into the Lost Zone. So when your opponent uses their Guzma, just to repeat what Guzma does, switch one of your opponent's bench with their active, and then if you do switch your active with Pokemon with one of your bench. So this means to get out of both sleep locks. Both your Komala is not stopping your opponent from taking prizes, and they also wake up from their sleep, meaning they can attack. and we don't like that. So we're going to get rid of that Guzma out of the game so they can no longer verse Seeker at backup. Verse Seeker always puts a supporter card from each pile into your hand. We play one copy of the Ditto. If you want to run third Drowzee, go ahead. I've already mentioned that though. It allows you just to evolve in any stage 1. We don't play any other stage 1, so I think it'd probably be better spent there. But this is just the remnants of the list I was testing, so I honestly think it's still fine. One copy of Jirachi-EX with a stellar guidance ability. When you play this Pokemon from your hand into your bench, you search your deck for a supporter card, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle your deck afterward. So we want this because it's Level Ball searchable, and it's a great way to go and search our deck for early game supporters. We want to be using Steven's Resolve to set up our board, and getting Lusamines and Rocket's Handiwork, and Guzma, Faba, Misfortune Sisters as they are needed, so we want to be able to search that out. We play this over Tapu Lele due to its searchability with Level Ball, and because it is pick-upable with Scoop Up Net, which we'll get to later. Supporter cards, we got 4 of the Steven's Resolve. Search for up to 3 cards, put them into your hand, and then your turn ends. So obviously in the early game it's a little bit annoying, so you can't snack search and Steven, but you absolutely want Steven as the best setup card for stall and control decks and expanded. If you get Marnie, you know it sucks, but Steven can get you back next turn. You just take one more turn off and go get it. And because you are putting your opponent to sleep often, a lot of times even if you do get Marnie, a lot of times your opponent's not going to be able to attack you that turn, so it's really not that big of a deal. You play 4 Stevens, and you play 4 verse Seeker, so you'll definitely be able to Stevens when you like. 3 copies of Lusamine here, put 2 in any combination of supporter and stadium from your Scabell into your hand. This deck is absolutely reliant on our stadium being in play. We will get to that later. And it is absolutely reliant on being able to reuse its milling supporters, because once we have this lock established and we have backup resources in hand just in case things were to go wrong, we're just going to be plowing the opponent's deck over with repeated mills while keeping our stadium in play. We need our stadium in play every time we pass our turn, otherwise this deck strategy can fail. So we play 3 copies of Lusamine because you don't want to prize one and then not be able to use it. 2 copies will do that to you. 3 copies, since we're absolutely needing it, works pretty well. 2 copies of Gladion here. Look at your face down prizes. Put 1 of them into your hand, then shuffle Gladion into your prizes in its place. So what we do here is, since we're a stall control deck, we're not taking any prizes. We're going to win by decking the opponent out. So we need to be able to get our supporters and our item cards that may be in the prizes. That would be helpful. Some of the most important cards in the deck you're going to want to get in this way would be your Misfortune Sisters, your Guzma, your Faba, in scenarios like that, as well as, you know, your Lusamine or your Gladion, or not Gladion, your Lusamines, or your Handiworks, not Gladion. Gladion do not Gladion for Gladion. That's not a very good strategy. And then obviously, if you prize heavy amounts of your Hypno line, you're going to want to get that out as well. Girafarig is also very good. Jirachi can be good early game, etc. 2 copies of Team Rocket's Handiwork. Flip 2 coins for each head. Discard the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. We just want to mill our opponent out. This card is honestly terrible, but you know, you flip a few heads with it, and that's how you win the game. So you might take you 30 turns to get those 2 heads you need, but it's gonna get you those 2 heads you need. So that's why we play it. Just going Gladion, by the way, I usually forget to mention this, but I prefer Gladion over Peonia in every single way, unless your deck is drawing a consistent draw engine. Something like the Cinchino engine would make Peonia more preferable, but this deck just absolutely Gladion is just, you usually don't need more than 2 pieces in the prizes regardless. You are almost never prizing more than 2 pieces. The only case where that can sometimes be an issue is when you prize a Gladion. So, when you like start the game with a Gladion prize, not you putting it in there. So when you only get 1 Gladion to use, sometimes it can be a problem. So you could increase it to 3, but it's better than Peonia. Believe me here, I don't like Peonia that much in most decks. We have 1 copy of Brigette here. Search your deck for up to 3 basic Pokemon and put them onto your bench. The first effect's not relevant. We're just searching for basics. And I'm a bit of a Brigette simp, not in the way that I like simp for the character, but in the way that I put it in every single deck that I have Jirachi-EX in. I built a deck the other day, and I was like, why does this deck suck? Why am I never setting up in my evolution deck? And then I looked, and I'm like, oh, I don't have Brigette, that's why. This is just a personal tidbit from me, longtime expanded rogue player. Put Brigette in any deck that you have supporter search in. If you were playing Jirachi or Lele or Lumineon, put Brigette in the deck if you have evolving Pokemon, because it just makes your deck so much more consistent. If you're playing like a full basic deck, you don't need Brigette. You can put like Nest Ball or Ultra Ball or Quick Ball and just get everything you need like 1, 2, 3. But in every deck that's playing evolving Pokemon, you're going to play Brigette. In, I think, most control decks, if you're going to play Jirachi, you might as well play Brigette. Just get a good board set up. One copy of Faba here. Choose a Pokemon tool, special energy, or a stadium in play, and put it into the Lost Zone. So the main thing we want to get rid of here is actually Chaotic Swell, because Chaotic Swell will keep our stadium out of play for a turn, and that can allow the opponent to get out of the sleep lock. We don't want that. Chaotic Swell is the biggest use of Faba here. However, there is a few other things. If your opponent has a way to stop the sleep condition, so we have, is it Herbal Energy, I believe? No, that's not it. There's something Grass Energy, the new Vivid Voltage Energy. Yes, or Aromatic Grass Energy that prevents special conditions. Get rid of those. You don't like those. And then going on with that, we also have the, I don't know why I can't find it. Yeah, that's weird. But Aromatic Grass Energy, that tool card that's going to prevent special conditions. The only stadium that you're really worried about is Chaotic Swell, because otherwise you can just bump it with your own stadium again. You are always going to win the stadium war, but you don't want a turn where your stadium's not in play, because then your opponent can get out of the lock. That's why Faba's here. A little bit delayed there. One copy of Guzma here. Talked about Guzma already. You use it because you want to gust something up. Especially, remember that you cannot trap a Pokemon that is not evolved, because then they will just evolve it. Something like we'll just give an example, an Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX. If you try to stall that, your opponent will just evolve it into, or Ice Rider Calyrex V, they will evolve it into the VMAX, and then get out of the sleep lock, and you don't want that to happen. It's not too big of a deal compared to some other decks, like when I was playing the Celebi Prism Stall, like, that deck, you cannot have your opponent ever evolve. This deck, you're just going to lose a prize potentially, or get a knockout taken on your Komala. So it's not the biggest deal in the world, but it is something to keep in mind. We play Guzma, so we can have unlimited uses with Lusamine, not Guzamine. I'm tired. One copy of Misfortune Sisters here. This card is absolutely great. Really makes the deck. Look at the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck, discard the number of items you find there, and your opponent shuffles the rest into their deck. So what you're going to do here is, this is actually better than Handiwork in this deck. Handiwork's still good, so we run it, and we don't want to prize it, so we run 2. But Misfortune Sisters is the real MVP of this deck, because the biggest thing your opponent's going to be looking for immediately is either Versus Seekers to get back Guzma, or Versus Seekers to get back like Birdkeeper, Tate Liza, a Switch supporter, or they're going to be looking for switching cards. There's a lot of bad decks in Expanded that will play heavy copies of Switch Rope, Switching Cart, even. Try to think. Warp Energy. No one plays Warp Energy. This is in 2010. But you're going to get rid of all of those item cards. Just really, you're going to use this until you're like certain your opponent's out of switching options. You're just going to spam Misfortune Scissors every single turn, and it's great. I love this card. It's so good. We play one copy of Pokemon Ranger here. Remove all effects on each player and his or her Pokemon. I usually don't put this in my rogue list that can't deal with ADP, but this one honestly can, because ADP is not going to be evolving. Get rid of a Guzma, and you're probably going to win the game. It's really simple as that. Pokemon Ranger really just swings that matchup in your favor, because you don't want them item locking you for even a single turn. So yeah, just play that. And we play one copy of Tate and Liza. Whenever I play a Lusamine deck, I always play a Tate and Liza in there. Choose one, shuffle your hand deck, draw 5, or switch your active one on your bench. I think every Lusamine deck should keep this in mind, that you want to play a shuffle draw supporter. That way you don't deck out. Sometimes if you go through your resources faster than your opponent in the way of setting up, something like a Steven's Resolve can burn through your deck pretty quickly, then you're going to want to not deck yourself out. And the way you would do that is by Lusamining repeatedly and Tate and Liza. Some people would use N, but I would advise against N, because you don't want to put more cards back in your opponent's deck. If they're going to have a card in hand they want to play, they're probably going to play it against this deck, something like a Guzma, Switch card, etc. They're probably just going to play it on that turn to get the value from it. So Tate and Liza is the absolute best choice. You draw 5 cards in a pinch, can also be a good draw supporter in the early game, and then you also get the choice to switch your active Pokemon to one on your bench. And considering our Hypnos have a retreat cost of 2, that can be potentially relevant, so keep that in mind. You want a Komala active at all times. Although, I mean, if you have to put a Hypno to sleep in the active, it's not the end of the world. You can stall with that if someone gusses up and you don't have an out. 4 copies of Level Ball here allows you to search Pokemon with 90 HP or less. That's going to get our Jirachi, our Ditto, our Girafarig, Munchlax, Hypno, Drowzee, everything except poor Komala, which had to be printed with 100 for some reason. And 4 copies of Nest Ball, that gets Komala, and that gets your other basic spell, so everything except for Hypno. Playing 4/4 is pretty decent. You almost never need the 4 Nest Ball, and if you want to play like if you want to play a Quick Ball or something like that, that way you can search Jirachi. To each their own. I just don't want to discard resources early on. Nest Ball works pretty well. 4 copies of Versus Seeker. Talk about this. You put a support card from your spell in your hand. We play lots of good supporters. We want to be able to access them, especially on early turns. You're going to want to be able to Steven's Resolve and just get 3 cards. And then in later stages of the game, you actually want to hold on to these Versus Seekers when you're Lusamine chaining, because you're going to be Lusamine chaining for the same 2 cards every turn, being Lusamine and your discard of choice. So if your opponent makes a play that you have to respond to, something like attaching a Aromatic Grass Energy, you're going to have to Versus Seeker for your Faba, Versus Seeker for your Pokemon Ranger in a play you would need it, Versus Seeker for Guzma in a play you would need it. You're going to be reusing these cards with Versus Seeker, not Lusamine most of the time, unless you're just really far ahead, but you want to be able to rush your opponent's deck with things like Fortune Sisters and Handiwork to get those items out. 2 copies of Lillie's Pokédoll. This is a spot that's kind of a flex spot, so if you have a card you really want to play, go ahead, put it in there. I just like having Lillie's Pokédoll to stall 1 or 2 turns while I'm setting up. It's been pretty good, but it can also be dead weight in the late game. If you prize Tate Liza and you can't get off of Gladion, it can also act as a prevent you from decking out, but I wouldn't rely on that strategy. So if you have 2 cards you absolutely want to put, go for it. This deck is really kind of like, it needs like 10 cards to pull off the combo, and everything else is fluff though, honestly. I guess you need more stadium counts, but stuff like that. Once you have the combo out, this is like a 3-card thing. Like you're just putting them to sleep, and then you're you're playing your Lusamine for turn, or playing your discard for turn, and then putting a card back, and that's all you do. It's a pretty simple deck. 1 copy of Echoing Horn, put a base Pokemon for your opponent's discard pile onto the bench. If your opponent has Pokemon in play that can just like get out of it, something like one of the matchups that we really struggle with is decks playing Bliss EV. And if your opponent's just playing Bliss EV, there's nothing you can do about that. If they're just playing a 4-quad Bliss EV like the video I did on the channel. But what you can do is that's why I played Alolan Muck, by the way, in this original list, was to counter Bliss EV. It's just not popular enough though. If you're playing a deck that has a Bliss EV in it as like a one-of, what you're going to do is you're just going to keep milling your opponent with Handiwork until you get a Pokemon in this pile that you can gust up and trap with Echoing Horn. And Echoing Horn gives you that opportunity if your opponent is smart and just keeps a Bliss EV, play nothing else. 1 copy of Carrier here. Put up 2 Pokemon each with 90 HP or less from your pile into your hand. Very conveniently gets back a whole Hypno line. Sadly, Ditto does not get recovered. 1 copy of Stretcher here. Choose 1, put a Pokemon from your pile into your hand, or shuffle 3 Pokemon from your pile into your deck. So you just want this to get back your Pokemon. This gets back your Komalas. That's why we play it. You're going to want to make sure you have these cards in hand at most times, with the Munchlax recovering them when you use them. 1 copy of Scoop Up Net. Put one of your Pokemon that isn't a VRGX into your hand. Can potentially be used to get out of Komala if you have it asleep and your opponent like has a Guzma discard you want to quick get rid of with Get Lost. Mainly though, it's just to pick up your Jirachi, pick up your Hypno if it gets stuck, all of the above. Jirachi is the main thing though. You don't want to be giving up extra prizes, since this is a deck that's working on denying prizes with All Just a Dream. 2 copies of Float Stone gives your Pokemon free retreat, mainly for Hypno. 2 copies of Rescue Scarf. If the Pokemon Scarf is attached to is knocked out, fight damage from attack, put the Pokemon into your hand. So you can put this on 2 Pokemon, but the Pokemon I put it on is honestly a Hypno. If your Hypnos are not active, this is another reason to play Tate Liza, I will just put a Rescue Scarf on it. That way when the opponent gusts it up and goes for the kill, I just get the Hypno back. And if they try to trap it, well, I have Tate Liza to get it out. 1 copy of Tool Jammer here. As long as this Pokemon is attached to the active spot, Pokemon tools and your opponent's active Pokemon have no effect. So if you know your opponent's playing a deck with Escape Board, which can get your opponent out of the sleep, we'll re-escape board real quick. This isn't the tool I was talking about earlier, by the way, that removes all of the special conditions. This one just makes it so your opponent can retreat if they're asleep or paralyzed. So we don't want that. So if your opponent's playing like a Jirachi team-up deck, which would use 4 Escape Board usually, you just put the Tool Jammer on your active at all times, and then when they play the Escape Board into play, you're just going to Faba those until they're gone, and then mill your opponent's deck, etc. 4 copies of Slumbering Forest. This is one of our huge build-around pieces. If a Pokemon is asleep, its owner flips 2 coins instead of 1 between turns. If either is tails, that Pokemon's still asleep. This card is absolutely great. because when Hypno puts Pokemon to sleep, then you put both active sleep. That means that Komala only has a 25% chance of waking up, and the opponent only has a 25% chance of waking up. So if you did your math there, that is a 1 in 16 chance that your opponent actually gets to attack and take a prize in the same turn. And if you can deny even one of those, if your opponent doesn't get to attack, obviously that's the better option. Or if your opponent gets to attack, but they're attacking into a Komala, get back here, a Komala that is asleep, they're not getting a prize for it, meaning they're not taking progress on the board state, and you're just going to throw another Komala at them next turn. That's why this deck is effective. That's why we need to play 4 copies of this, and that's why we need to play Lusamine to also get them back. Lusamine is obviously very strong, allowing us to just endlessly get the Slumbering Forest. It really makes this deck good, and the best thing is that if your opponent bumps it into their turn, they don't get to like wake up during their turn. It's going to come back to us, and even if they wake up, we're just going to replace the Slumbering Forest and put them back to sleep. Do beware of chaotic swell. That's why we play Faba, so we can put put the Slumbering Forest back into play. 1 copy of Life Dew here. If the Pokemon this card's attached to is knocked out, your opponent takes 1 for your prize card. I could be swayed on this. If you want to play a different card, go ahead. I just don't think it's needed, so I run Life Dew. Life Dew just denies another prize, and this deck is in the business of prize denying because you can reuse it with Snack Search as well. It's pretty good. 1 copy of Capture Energy. If this is attached to a Pokemon, it provides colorless. When you attach it, search your deck for a basic Pokemon and put it onto your bench. We need an energy to pay for Get Lost, and we're not retreating, so we don't really need something like Recycle. We can reuse this with Munchlax, etc. So we just need 1 energy for Get Lost. Keep in mind that if it is prized, you will probably have to get it if you plan on using Get Lost that game, though you can go without. That is my Komala stall list. I've only played about 5 games with this, so it's not super tested out. Again, I mean, if you want to swap this for a Drowzee, there's my remnants of testing. I have over 200 expanded decks. I don't get around to updating all the lists constantly, but it's been a lot of fun to make this Komala deck work. If it only had 90 HP, it's going to be so much more consistent and so much better. But however, that's the deck. Thank you guys so much for watching. Check out the deck. If you want to change the list, go ahead. Maybe you can make a better list than I can. This is just a starting draft for you. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.